I'm Ben Coleman, your anchor host for the Florida Aviation Network. I said, let me say that a little bit slower. Florida Aviation Network. We get into such a habit of talking fast. I want to talk like my daddy talks, and he talks slow. We're here at the 2021 Sun and Fun Expo and International Fly-In, and we are. It seems to be the morning for flight instruction, and that's a good thing, because without flight instructors, we will not have ab initio pilots, and we will not have pilots moving forward in their careers. So we're fortunate enough this morning to have not one, but two highly recognized flight instructors in not only the local area or the regional area, but the nation. And who knows, if they come up with a flight instructor of the world, I think one of these guys are probably going to be CFI of the world. Welcome, guys. Ron Timmermans, and we got Gary Reeves.
Hey, how
Gary,
are you?
Gary, touch me. There
How
you
you
go.
doing,
All right.
Good to
Ron,
see you
touch
again.
me again. Guys, what are you doing here?
Well, I just came to vote for him for Instructor of the World.
Okay.
They wouldn't take my absentee ballot.
And I already put you in for nomination for the Instructor of the World, so I guess we're in conflict here. Huh?
We'll share the prize.
And guys, we're really stiff here at the Florida Aviation Network. We're really tight on protocols, and we're very staunch about our presentations. This is live and in the clear, and we just got served lunch here in the production area. So if you hear some smacking, or a plate or a fork or knife hitting the floor, it's food. This is something I want to mention. Gary, you have a particular flamboyant flair about you, and believe it or not, that is not a pink shirt. It is a magenta shirt. And explain to me, Gary, why you're wearing a magenta shirt.
Well, my specialty is I'm one of the top experts on single pilot IFR using GPS, autopilots, and ForeFlight. So GPS is often called, the pink or the magenta line. So I thought it would be good branding several years ago to rebrand myself as Gary GPS, the guy in the pink shirt Reeves. And it certainly helps me stand out in a crowd. There are so many people at conventions every year that wear the standard black, blue, yellow, and I'm typically the only guy in pink, so I'm pretty easy to spot. And it goes to my credit, my expertise of I teach GPS. That's really my specialization.
Well, Gary, what an expert is.
What's that?
It is a former drip under pressure. That was a joke. You can laugh now. Everybody relax. I'm not going to, but no. Expert is really, it's just a person with more knowledge than the norm. Higher.
It's exactly what I tell my clients. People hire me all over the world to do a 3-day private class in their airplane. And it's 20 hours of training in 3 days. And on the second day, I push all the buttons. And I'm pushing buttons on the GPS and the autopilot and ForeFlight really fast. And they always seem overwhelmed, and they always go, well, you make it look so easy. After 20 years as a full-time job, it is. Mm-hmm. They're great at their full-time job. I'm not smarter than anybody else, but I get paid to teach GPS, autopilots, and ForeFlight every day for my full-time job. You're right, it's just experience.
And Gary, I'm going to switch to Ron, and I've got a bone to pick with this man. He gets to fly one of the nicest aircraft professionally Baron. I've always been a fan of the Baron, the 58. And how do you do it? I mean, you're flying all these nice aircraft, probably got that new airplane smell in every one of them that you open the door.
Well, I have been blessed to fly a variety of aircraft, most of them Beechcraft, Bonanzas and Barons. And certainly the Baron is a beautiful airplane to fly. I've had a couple of occasions to go to the factory with an owner who just recently purchased a new Baron and fly it away from the factory. And that is like a thrill of thrills. It really is. And that's truly the new smell. Beechcraft folks, and I'm sure other aircraft manufacturers as well, when they sell a new airplane for an incredible amount of money each year, they do it up real nice. And at Beechcraft, they bring in the new owner and anyone who's with him or her, and they treat them with royalty. A dinner at the factory, tour of the entire factory, seeing the aircraft during the production phases and the like, and then their new aircraft in a hangar with pristine white floor and white walls with a huge American flag in the background and a big bow on top of the cowling of the airplane. At least that's the way it is for Bonanzas and Barons. They kind of put it on top of the airplane. And then they go through with all with the owner with all the maintenance that is included with the airplane, as well as the warranty things and the like. And then as their flight instructor, I got also the nice treatment and along with them, and then along with the new owner, we flew it away from Wichita back to their home. And I've done that a number of times with both Bonanza and Baron new owners and the like. But those are kind of the unique situations. I don't always get to do that, of course, because not everyone can afford or chooses to purchase a brand new airplane from the factory. I fly a lot of airplanes that are pre-owned or have been owned by a pilot owner for a long time. Almost exclusively I fly with people who own their own Beechcraft, Bonanza or Baron, and I give them either transition training when they purchase it to help them learn how to fly it safely and efficiently, or recurrent proficiency training, something that many of them wish to do once each year, sometimes once every 6 months, or even more often on some occasions. And so I get to fly some really nice airplanes with a variety of equipment, and I find it a good challenge to keep up on all the equipment, whether it be Avidyne or Garmin. And so the Garmin is new products all the time, anywhere from G1000s to G500s to the normal King 6-pack and the like, and a very variety of autopilots, and understand how they interface and the like. So my challenges are good, and I very much enjoy doing what I do, and I get fulfillment out of it. So I don't know if that answered all your questions, but at least it gave you a snippet.
You hit most of my curiosity band, but I'm going to come up with some more in just a few minutes. And I do happen to notice that there's a book here. I don't know. Looks like number 3. If is number 1 hot? No, it's not hot, but it's going to be hot.
It is now.
Obi's scrambling around the trailer saying, "What's he doing now? What's he doing now? What's he doing?" I'm just holding up a little book here that happens to have a magenta cover on it. Oh, he said, "Uh-oh, number 2's shot." Anyway, this is a book that, and there's a fellow on the back that kind of resembles somebody sitting here on our set. Gary, is there anything that you're going to be doing here during Sun and Fun, the 2021 Sun and Fun? Kind of explain a little bit more about what your wares are?
Yeah, I'm actually teaching 15 free safety classes. Most of them are in the CFAA building. And if you just go on the Sun and Fun daily schedule and search for Reeves, R-E-E-V-E-S, you'll see it. But I'm doing a very special 2-hour single pilot IFR real world pro tips class at the Bueller Aerospace Center Friday at 5 p.m. And we're going to talk about the topics in this book.
Gary, hold that up over your face. There you go.
That picture's actually better of me.
Yeah, because they're locked in on your face there. So
there you go.
Did I tell you how stiff we are here?
It's a very tough interview. It's a very tough crowd.
But and you know, IFR, some folks they get chills thinking about, I can't do IFR. It's too difficult. It's too scary, and I've got to maintain, plus or minus 50 feet, and plus or minus a half a degree. And if I get more than a wing tip off of the airway, I'm going to get violated. And they miss the whole concept of what really true instrument flight is about. It's about maintaining separation,
right?
And not hitting stuff.
And that's kind of why I wrote the book. There's so many great instrument instructors and so many great instrument examiners, and the instrument rating ACS, which used to be a PTS, it's designed to get a minimum level of skill that is almost totally different from real world IFR flying. You're never going to do 3 back-to-back approaches in 15 minutes. In fact, a professional pilot is probably not going to go missed because they're going to plan to not need the mist. And there's so much better techniques of real world flying that are different than what's taught to get you through a check ride. So the check ride training is critical. It's safety training. but the real world techniques that I talk about just aren't taught by most instructors.
Well, I do remember any approach that I was making, and if you have to make a miss, there's a certain knee factor, I call it, after your first missed. Your knees, okay, now you got my attention. Knees start to quiver a little bit. You missed again, and now the knees are just flapping. So you might as well just go somewhere else, because you're going to be so damn nervous, so you can't really concentrate. But that's because you let the airplane get so far away from you and ahead of you. Tell me what your thoughts are on that, both of you. You've made a missed approach or two in your time.
I have. Fortunately, not too many, because our instruments are so good, and I just don't fly in weather that is just super low clouds that I would likely have to make a miss. But I remember the few times that I have had to make a missed approach, both in personal flying as well as in training with a client. I was so pleased that I had the discipline when I got down to the DA or to the missed approach point on a non-precision approach, that I pushed the throttle forward, pitched to a climb attitude, and climbed away. And I had the discipline to do that. And that's one of the things that we train for, because it would be foolish to try and dip below the minimums and say, I think I can make it in. On one of those missed approaches, I remember right after I pushed the throttle forward and pitched for a climb attitude, I glanced at my peripheral vision, and I could see the airport. Oh, you talk about a magnetic draw to want to pull the throttle back and do that. But I kept the discipline like I'm supposed to, like I teach students that I fly with. And once you decide to make a missed approach, you go through, follow through with it, and the like. And I think fortunately for me, that time I came back around and the weather was just a little bit better, and I was able to get down to the minimums. Did not duck under, but I could see the airport this time, the runway environment, and I descended and made a successful landing. So yeah, it can be scary, and as Gary mentions, we train for this. But we train for doing a missed approach, and we rarely have the opportunity to do it. It is a good thing to train for, because when you need to do it, you don't want it to be your first time. You don't want it to be the first time after a long time of not doing a missed approach. You have to have the discipline. You have to have the procedure. You have to know how to execute it on your navigator, GPS navigator, or whatever you're using for guidance and the like. And it needs to be routine, and it just has to be natural. It can't be, I need to figure out what to do or go to a book and look it up during the missed approach. So it's important. Gary also makes another good point, that when we're training, and I do a lot of training with clients, instrument rated clients, and we do what's known as an instrument proficiency check, where the instructor and the client have to do at least 3 approaches, certain specifics required to do that. But when pilots are training with me or with Gary and they do 3 approaches successively, like one after the other, that's not real-world IFR flying, because normally when you're doing real-world IFR flying, you got 1 departure, 2 or 3 hour leg, 1 approach and landing at the destination, and you got plenty of time to prepare for that mentally, physically, with the charts and everything in front of you and the like. But when you're doing 3 in the matter of a couple of hours, that is really pushing it through there, and it's just it's not realistic, but it is what's required for an instrument proficiency check. So my heart goes out to the folks that I'm pushing to do 3 approaches in just a short amount of time, recognizing that if they can do that, then they can probably do the 1 departure, long cross country, and one arrival and approach. So that's good.
So one of the way the book starts is, the 2 biggest killer of pilots, in my opinion, are not CFIT, VFR and IMC, stall spins. There's really 2 big causes of things that kill pilots in the US. And one is adrenaline paralysis, and the related one is called decision fatigue. So we know that your decision quality rapidly decreases. Your decisions get worse based on how many decisions you've made, how long you've been making, how fast you are forced to make them, and then stress just immediately decreases quality. So you are most likely to die single pilot IFR on your 2nd or 3rd attempt at an instrument approach, because you get tired, and then once you get scared, the forebrain actually locks up in something called adrenaline paralysis. We had this horrible accident in Texas a couple of years ago where a guy who was not IFR current, did not do IPCs on a regular basis with their instructor because it's not required, died on his 7th attempt at the same ILS.
Wow.
And each one just got progressively worse. There was a VFR airport 10 miles away, and our Tracon Regional in North Texas was begging the guy, dude, turn left, there's a VFR airport. But he got locked up in the, I've got to get home. And that's adrenaline paralysis. You know, once you get behind the ball, which happens so quickly in repeated approaches, it's almost impossible to get back out of that. So,
Well, and Gary, I told myself I wasn't going to do this, but I am going to commend you for using a word that we seldom use when we talk about aviation in general. But it's called dying. I mean, if you mess up bad enough, you're probably going to die. And we are so careful to try to stay away from that topic that, oh, no, don't talk about dying. You're going to stop flying. It's going to scare them away. Well, no, it just lets you know that it's the supreme price that you pay for making maybe either some bad decisions or using some bad judgment.
well, and it's funny because if you look at the accident reports, none of the pilots woke up and said, I'm going to die today. And most of the pilots that do unfortunately pass away are good pilots. But once you get behind that decision fatigue curve, your decisions get very poor. JFK Jr. accident was kind of a classic example. He had a working autopilot in the airplane. When he started to lose control, if he had pushed heading, altitude, hold, the plane would have been fine. He couldn't make that decision once he became scared. And again, that's just something else I talk about in the book. I've recently studied thousands of accident reports, and I've only found one clear difference between the people who die and the people who live. People who declare a mayday before it becomes an emergency always live. People who do not declare the mayday or declare it too late typically pass on. So it's asking for help before you get in trouble that is the best thing you can do to save your own life.
And I would add that it can start before you even begin the flight for the day. So in the last few years, I have incorporated a risk analysis acronym known as PAVE, P-A-V-E, with all of my students and personally before I fly each time. And it's an analysis where, in my case as an instructor with the pilot with whom I'm flying, we go through and we look at each of those letters in the acronym. P for pilot. I ask the pilot, how are you feeling? Did you get a good night's sleep? Anything that would preclude you from doing your best today? And then we look at A for the aircraft. And again, how has the aircraft been running? Is there any known deficiencies that you have with your aircraft? How long has it been since it's come out of maintenance? Oh, this is the first flight after annual? Oh, antennas go up, right? And then V for environment, meaning what is the weather going to be like today? What are we expecting for cloud layers? What are we expecting for turbulence, wind, and the like? So we at least analyze how this flight will be conducted with the current weather conditions or the forecast weather conditions. And then E for external factors. Do you have anything that is bothering you today? Is there an issue at work or an issue at home that may preclude your giving your best judgment today? Or is there a particular time limit that you have that you need to be back on the ground? And so before I even start a flight with a client or before I start a flight myself, I analyze those 4 things. And that's a good preparation for at least putting you in the right frame of mind. And then Gary's point is, if you have to make a second approach, there is a much higher risk with that. And if you're going to make a third approach, you're probably making one of the worst decisions of your life. Because if you've tried twice and it hasn't worked out for you to make the approach to a successful landing, the chances of it happening the third time, far, far less, and the chances of something going really bad wrong, the dying word, are very much a more likely outcome.
Yeah,
And the gentleman that you mentioned in Texas, I know of the case and the like, and on the tapes, on the RTEC tapes, they even hear him saying, I am so tired. quote unquote.
That's
And so
decision. That's decision fatigue.
Those words, when they came out, I mean, you just felt for the gentleman that, oh man, this is so terribly wrong, and he could have done something so simple as just to go a few miles away to another airport. Why don't we do this as pilots? I don't know.
That's adrenaline paralysis and decision fatigue.
Indeed.
There have been a lot of interesting medical studies that once you get scared, the frontal cortex is where you make decisions. Once you get scared, you become incapable of making a logical decision. It is no different in one study. Adrenaline release from being scared was found to have no difference between that and a 0.15 blood alcohol. They just become locked. And one of the biggest signs of decision fatigue and adrenaline paralysis is the inability to change plans. So I've got to get to this airport, and they will not stop until they're at that airport. That's decision fatigue right there.
Guys, quickly, it just reminded me of something that when I was back involved in a lot of analysis for accident investigations. You know, the most likely scenario that you're going to have an accident in an airplane, not necessarily fatal, but an accident?
What's that?
When you got 2 flight instructors in the airplane. I'm serious. When you looked at the stats of, and it just, we couldn't really figure it out. But I mean, because each one of you thought. Do me a favor, when we talk about, do you use a checklist?
Oh, yes.
Gary, do you use a checklist?
Absolutely.
Do you have a landing checklist that you use before you're coming out shooting an approach?
Pre-landing checklist.
Pre-landing checklist? Will you do me the honor of rephrasing that to call it the missed approach checklist or the go-around checklist?
Okay.
Because it makes you stop and think, because so many people, they're gonna drive it. I'm gonna land this airplane. I don't care what position, how unstable I am, I'm gonna land. Airspeed's a little bit high, that's okay, I'm gonna land. This is a landing checklist. But if it doesn't feel right, I'm gonna go around.
You know,
particularly VFR. But.
You know, I'd actually like to ask a favor of all the flight instructors in the world. I think one of the biggest disservices we do to primary students is we show people how to save a bad approach, a bad landing. Oh, you're high, slip to land. Oh, you're a little crooked, we'll do this. I think we'd prevent a lot of GA accidents if we focused instead on short final, if you're not stabilized, go around. There seems to be such a focus on you need to be able to land no matter what, that then causes problems. And one of the biggest differences between a professional pilot and an amateur to me is a professional pilot, I'm going missed until I'm off the runway. An amateur, I'm going to land, they get surprised by the mist. I actually landed on a runway with a 200-foot overcast. My wheels touched the runway, and I still had to go around because a car pulled out in front of me on the runway.
There you go.
So yeah, I love that. I love that idea of yours.
Well, I have not personally landed in parking lots like you have, Gary, but
Well, Walmart had a sale, and I had to get there.
okay, just razzing you a bit.
Well, guys, I think we batted this around quite a bit, and it's been an honor to have talked with you. But we're going to cut this interview short.